Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, September 26th. And if we'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this morning, the first thing we'd like to do is approve our agenda, but are there any adjustments or changes to today's agenda? Any items?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this point, we're going to have our public comment period, and this is an opportunity for citizens to appear before the board. Are there any citizens who would like to speak this morning? Any citizens who would like to speak? All right, if not, we'll move on to our consent agenda items. And so we have claims, our minutes, a final pay request for some reconstruction on County Road 45, a contract for winter maintenance, and the appointment of Mary Somnis to the EDA board. Are there any items a commissioner would like to pull this morning? Seeing or hearing none, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have Highway Department work to do this morning, and we'd like to welcome our highway engineer, Robbie Hass. Good morning, Robbie.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. First thing that's up there is a resolution of support for the local road improvement program, LRIP, for a resurfacing project I am proposing to submit for the Gunflint Trail between the 92s. If you're familiar with that section of road, it's in nasty, nasty shape. And so what this program is a state-funded program to do projects like that. A similar one, 5th Avenue West here, just outside the door, if you remember and see that every single day. We were awarded $835,000 through this very program for a project like that. So it's a great program. It's an easy way, not easy, but it's a competitive way for us to get money. And so what planning to submit is resurfacing the road there. I think we'll pursue approximately half the project cost, so about $1.5 million. So is there any questions?
I will just make a comment that I'm so appreciative we have an opportunity for these funds. These are funds then we don't have to levy for the taxpayers. And so I'm very, very appreciative you've gone to this effort and are ready with this. Are there any other comments or questions that commissioners have?
I'll just say here.
All right.
I'll make a motion to adopt and sign the LRIP grant resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills, and I will support that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Hey, thank you. The next thing is we recently had put together plans and went out for bid for a county highway storage facility. We've talked about that at length, whether here in committees. I think we brought it up at the committee of the whole at one point in time as well. And so when we went out for bid with this, unfortunately, we were only able to get one bidder. And so, okay, and you can see the bid that it came in at, and it's quite a bit higher than what we thought it was going to be. And so I wanted to have some time, do some research, talk with other architecture firms, see what they're seeing in the industry, seeing if this is reasonable, because it's not so bad that it's just one bidder, but the fact that it's quite a bit more than we thought, warrants that discussion. And so upon further discussion and maybe just some different ways to even do the bidding, buildings are a little bit different as far as that process than roads and bridges are. We're recommending we reject this bid and then just redo it later in the fall. Is there any questions regarding this one in particular?
Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you, Engineer Hess. Any idea why it was higher, or that's what you're hoping to find out, kind of?
There's a lot of things that have come up, like I said, with roads and bridges, there's an avenue we normally pursue in getting the information out, hey, this project exists. And that's where those types of contractors look. And so one comment, in talking with a lot of different people was maybe we weren't posting it in the right place that building contractors look. You can look at a list of plan holders on projects so you can see everybody that kind of checks out the plans. And what was interesting is, and a lot of times it's construction journals, it's contractors, it's, subs to the contractors so you can see who's holding it. But when we looked at this particular project, there really were only one, maybe two contractors that could have actually done the project. So to me, that's saying either we did it too early, actually, so everyone was too busy, didn't have time to look at it, and didn't bid, or we just put it in the wrong place, And so that's one avenue is that. So that's what we're also exploring for this next time for rebidding, is do we do the same thing, or do we change it up a bit? I've talked with the city, and I've talked to some of my counterparts across the state on different, like I said, ways to go and contract these services. And so buildings might be a little bit different than how we do things, so.
Certainly,
Yeah, more to come.
Okay. And forgive me, and this might be putting you on the spot here.
That's okay.
Could you remind us the square footage of the building?
Sure. It was if I remember right, it was about 60 by 100.
Okay.
So
thank
if
you.
my math serves me correct, 6,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Phew, that was close, yeah.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Remind me, is
Sure.
this the salt sand storage?
No. So this is a separate, our salt sand storage got built, and that's done and great, and everything was on budget and exactly how we wanted. This one is for it's another heated storage garage, and so on our main campus. And so if you think of the Hovland garage, something very similar to that, but on our campus. And so this would be tucked behind. This was the one we had talked about with the Jenga we have to play every morning in the winter, getting the graders and the trucks and everything else out. We have a lot of storage outside, which, we can go down that avenue if we really want to. But anyways, yeah, so this is a heated storage garage on our campus.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other items, questions? Commissioner Mills, you said the size was at 60 by 100? I just
Correct.
want to clarify that. Okay, all right.
I'll make a motion to reject the bid for the construction of the storage facility.
60 by 100 foot building, is it radiant heat or?
So this is not time for public comment? We just had that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get you on my way out.
Thanks.
All right. So go ahead, Commissioner Mills.
I made my motion.
Yep.
And I'll support.
All right, so we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, everyone.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie.
All right, Land Services. Neva Maxwell is here with us this morning to talk about the Paul Stucker interim use permit amendment. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So at the Planning Commission meeting, what month are we in now? September 13th, I believe it was.
Yeah.
The Planning Commission held a public hearing for the Paul Stucker amendment to his existing interim use permit. So if you may recall, I believe all three of you were on for that initial interim use permit last year. So he was issued a 2-year interim use permit for the Tamarack Land Cooperative. And there's various aspects of that interim use permit, but this amendment is specific to the cooperative member stays. So he wanted to amend that membership structure to remove the shortest term, essentially he had a 14 days or less member stay level. So they wanted to get rid of that level and then add more people to that long-term full-time residency. So essentially went from 3 full-time residents to 5 full-time residents. It's a 40-acre parcel, so we're not terribly concerned about density. The other aspect is that they'd like to add a tiny house for one of those additional full-time residents. So that does require a conditional or interim use permit, typically anyway, given how many dwellings are on the property already. So that's the request. At the public hearing, we never received any written comments, nor did we receive any in-person comments. The community really didn't have any concerns or comments about the request. Planning Commission asked a few questions of Mr. Stucker, and they all felt it was a unanimous approval. One of the conditions was that this interim use amendment be timed to the original interim use. So essentially, this approval would be valid through next year when that initial interim use lapses. So everything can kind of be addressed and all tidied up all at once.
Any questions for Ms. Maxwell this morning? Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Neva. Yeah, yes, we were all here, and I do remember there was a little controversy or concern about that first IUP, and the feedback I've been hearing since then is all very positive. None of the kind of doomsday concerns were, and sorry, that's maybe an exaggeration, but none of the concerns have really come to fruition there, and I'm really happy that that's the case, and I'm really happy that they came back and are asking for an amendment to that, and I'd hope that we can kind of fill out their original request, because my memory is we did walk that back a bit, but I don't have any other questions, just wanted to give that feedback of what I've been hearing, and with that, I'd make the motion to approve the amendment to the IUP.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills, and I'll provide support. And also a comment that it's one more place for an individual to live in Cook County, one more unit towards solving our housing crisis, and that was mentioned at the Planning Commission as well. So we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Neva.
Neva.
Auditor Powers, good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've been analyzing our little reserve funds and trying to consolidate and see where we can eliminate some. One of them we thought about eliminating was the Platbook fund, since we haven't created one since 2012. But in talking to the MIS department, Kyle and Rowan, and they would like to use that money for a backlog of GIS projects, and then include in that fund that we're carrying right now, which is around $19,000, that we've been carrying to create new Platbooks, which we never will do, is a $14,000 payment they're getting from Soil and Water for some GIS work they did specifically for them. And so Rowan is here to describe some of those projects that they'd like to do with those funds.
Yeah, thank you. So the list of projects that we have include things like right-of-way mapping, easement mapping, parcel boundary accuracy improvement, or the PLSS corner control adjustments, and even potentially several severed mineral rights mapping, which would have implication for PILT funding. Mm-hmm. So we have a big stack of projects, and with Brady bringing forward the information about the funding, it's kind of shifting our thoughts on what we might be able to accomplish in 2024. So that's the high-level list of the projects that we're going to go through and get pricing and see what we can accomplish with the funds available, and then prioritize from there. So that's what we have in mind with the funding, and like Auditor Powers said, our web mapping application has replaced the Platbook use, and so happy to talk about that or answer questions if there are related to that, but we won't be doing that anymore, and since there's funding available, we'd like to allocate it to these projects that will need some funding.
Thank you. Well, I know I'm really supportive of this funding and moving forward in a new direction. I have one of the last plat books that was printed, and I use it when I go out hunting. And for those that are less able to use technology, how would one go about printing out something that they wanted to use if they were out in the field for whatever purpose?
Sure. So there's a few different ways you can do it. You can use it on a device. You can download a PDF to a device and then use a free application like Avenza, and that's all linked through on the main county page under our web mapping functions. And then you can take that outside and regardless of whether you have cell service or not, it'll actually show your location on a geo-reference PDF. So even as a little bit more detail than using the map, trying to look at landmarks and reference where you are, it'll actually show yourself. But if you really want to print one out, you can download that PDF, mark it up however you want, add, subtract layers, and then once it's saved as a PDF, you can print it.
All right, great. Well, I think that'll be valuable information for the public, and that's my primary purpose in asking that question. Are there other questions? Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Rowan. And for those who don't have access, say, to the device, is there a service that we could provide for printing out the map yet, or is that?
We do large format printing in the recorder's office, and so contractors and other folks that want large format blueprints or other things printed out, they can come in, and there's a fee schedule and a process for that. The recorder's office has the large format printer.
Okay, and then otherwise, the public library could be a place to do just that regular PDF size, or, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Thank
great.
you.
Good question, good question. Any other questions or comments for Ron? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Stortley. We have a motion and support. Anything further? Questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We are clipping along. Administrator York.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. This morning, we have on your agenda the preliminary budget and levy for 2024 for the EDA. Joining us this morning, we have EDA board members Steve Serbaugh, Mark Shackelford, and then we also have our new EDA director, Teresa Bida. And so I'd like to invite those three up to the front of the Adriana, I don't know if there's something on the panel there that we'll have to wait a minute.
Do over.
Yeah,
Sorry,
can't
folks.
replicate that. No.
Let me run and talk to Diana real quick.
Yeah.
While we're waiting here, I'd just like to say the initial information we're getting right now is wonderful. And I really appreciate the detail that you pulled out. I think that will help the public understand all of these different expense categories. And thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
You know, we're educating ourselves, but also it's really important that the public understand what all of these line items are.
Huh, maybe it's just your mic. Do you want to try?
Just like to say
Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe that's, well,
Yeah.
we have to catch up here. Okay.
the initial information we're getting right now is wonderful.
Feel free to
And I really
start talking and
appreciate
listen.
the detail. Try talking and
Do some
we'll
tests,
see.
because we got to catch up
Test,
here.
test.
Understand all of these different expense
Is it on?
categories. And thank you for doing that. Absolutely.
Oops.
Maybe take
See,
it
now I went to the,
Just like to say,
sorry,
yeah?
maybe that's.
down the PowerPoint, maybe will help.
I'm sure the listening public is having a lot of fun with this. But also it's
They're
really
getting caught in the time loop.
understand what all of these line items are.
Huh, maybe it's just your mic. Do you want to try? You ever think of that?
Just like to say,
Sorry.
yeah?
Maybe that's, well, we have to catch up here. Okay.
The initial information we're getting right now is wonderful.
Feel free to start talking and listen.
Detail. Try talking and
Do some
we'll
tests,
see.
because we got to catch up here.
Yeah. All right.
It worked the whole time, turns out.
Okay.
So it appears the audio is working now.
Yeah.
So with that, happy to hand it to board members if they have additional comments. Otherwise, we're here for questions.
I think the one other thing I would want to highlight is that the money that was loaned from the county to the EDA has now been paid back this year. So I know that's been a long outstanding question, and I just wanted to remind everybody that has been taken care of this year.
Very good point. Thank you, Steve.
And that would require the $1,000 loan fee that we have in our budget doesn't need to be there any longer too, so there could be a minor person there. So,
Okay.
And-
Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out for the public and everyone's benefit, that it is a very significant levy increase, and the two biggest expenses would be that staffing, and that's something we've talked a lot about, really needing that support, that staff support, if we're really trying to get more done and not have our executive directors doing unnecessary busy work, that where their expertise can be better used, and then also that business development fund, rather than having to come back and getting that, it's like year after year we've been needing to use that, and that's something that's really benefiting our community. So I'm in full support of this, and really wanted to advocate that we bring this forward to the board to ask for, so we can keep making progress and keep building the organization in our community in a sustainable way. So.
And I would
thank you.
fully support that. When I served on the EDA board 2 years ago, that discussion was occurring. And so it has been long coming. Absolutely. Steve?
I think the one thing I would add just to that part of the discussion is, for the last 9 months or so, since I've been president of the EDA, there's, just a reminder, we're a volunteer board. I have personally had to do quite a bit of work that would normally have been done by staff, just because it's stuff that has to get done, and I'm doing that in a volunteer capacity. And so I don't think that's sustainable in the long run for the EDA, and it's important that stuff get done for the good of the community and our responsibilities to the county. So I think that if we're going to think about it from a long-term sustainability standpoint, there needs to be some extra support.
Absolutely.
And I would just point out historically, the EDA levy was $400,000 in 2022 and $360,000 each of the prior years. So if you compare it to that, it's just the anomaly of last year taking a big drop that makes it look dramatic.
Right.
Thank you for that perspective.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, and thank you for coming before our commission. Just a couple questions about the not itemized. I know probably you don't know as far as board per diem travel. Is that what that means? Your per diem is for travel?
No, per diem is the fee that the board members get. It's $30 currently per meeting. So
Okay, all right.
Multiply the board members times 12 times 30, and that's where you get the number.
About that, okay, all right. And the other would be the Cedar Grove taxes. They weren't itemized in '23, but now you think it's going to be about 5,000 in '24?
Now, looking at the remaining lots that we have,
Yeah.
it's projecting forward, yes. If we sell lots, that number gets down lower.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Right now, that's our thought process.
Are most of the lots gone now?
Most of them are, yes.
Maybe one or two left?
A little more than that.
Oh, okay.
I believe 5 with pending sale and 2 of 5.
Okay.
And so then at sale, as part of sort of the closing and title work, the taxes get paid at that time.
Mhm. I drove through the other day, and it looks like there's some ground being shovel-ready kind of stuff going on, and a huge big project over here on the east side. So I think, it's good because, Teresa, you've come in with some fresh eyes, too, in working with the board members on this. I'm sure they helped you, but you have vast experience also, so we appreciate your background on all of that. And Steve, are you saying that in the future you're looking at support, meaning hiring for secretary, or what category are you looking at?
Yeah, so I think that's, it's either thinking about a part-time support staff or maybe contracting for some professional services outside the EDA. I think that's yet to be determined, how those extra items get taken care of, that have historically just been taken care of by board members volunteering extra time and work.
Right. Okay, that can be sorted out with a few months of experience here and a recommendation that you'd have later on then. That wouldn't be that included, though, in the levy budget right now?
We are.
It is.
we
It
are
is.
asking for
Okay.
administrative
Yes.
support.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
in there. Kind of
Great. All right.
holding a spot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Brady, could you just clarify kind of what we were talking about as far as the Cedar Grove levy is concerned yesterday, and including that or not including that, and that, I'm just confused again now, going back
it's-
and forth.
Yeah, it's always been kind of added almost off to the side oftentimes when the EDA historically presents their levy, because it's something that they haven't taken action on directly. This came about, I can't remember how many years ago, where the city, the lots weren't selling fast enough, and then the city's temporary bond where they were paying interest was being transformed into one where they were going to pay principal and interest, about $120,000 a year, and they came to the county and said, hey, we share in this organization, would you guys help pay half of that levy? And the board at that time agreed, and that amount was $60,000. So the board said, yeah, we'll pay that $60,000, we're going to pay it through the EDA's levy. So it's something the EDA board didn't, request. And so they see it as kind of an extra that the county and the city came to agreement on. But it is part of the levy, so that they can make that payment.
And so I guess what I'm asking is their request, our request,
Yeah.
is $430,000, but we as the county board would need to approve the $490. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you need to approve the 490, yeah, period. And they really are requesting it because they have to make that payment,
Okay.
and it has to be levied in order to
Okay.
make that payment, so.
Okay, thank you. And just for the public to clarify, that the 2 lots that, in the business park that will be sold will be for housing, is that correct? No.
So
All right.
there's 2 lots in the southeast corner.
Right.
Right on the new Gunflint Trail.
Mhm.
And those lots, we've made available those lots to the HRA.
Right.
To a housing project, and there's ongoing work. In fact, there were folks up yesterday, in fact, looking at it. So there's good progress and good interest on those.
Okay,
Those lots are not being sold, they're just being made available to the
Okay.
HRA.
just so the public is clear.
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right. Other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make the motion to approve the EDA fiscal year 2024 preliminary budget and levy for $490,720.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mills.
Really want to thank you all for being here and being on the board and doing the excellent work that's being done. It's next level in a new chapter, and it's just really exciting. Lots of good work being done. Thank you.
Lots of good current work, and I appreciate all the work when we didn't have an executive director that the board has put in to cover that. Thank you so much. We have a motion and support. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time this morning. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Teresa. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
All right, and with that, we'll move on to our administrator updates.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things this morning. Tomorrow, Chair Sullivan and I are going to be driving up to Ely to do a very short presentation on our capital improvement plan bonding application. This is the House Capital Investment Committee. They've asked us to come up and just give a 10-minute talk on kind of the scope of the project and what we're seeking from the state and why. That will be around midday, so we'll be going up in the morning, coming back in the afternoon. And then also joining us tomorrow will be our partners from North Shore Waste, Dustin and Rena Rogers will be joining us to talk about the application that we also have submitted for the development of the transfer station east of town here. So that's kind of a big step in this process, just kind of getting information to the legislators about our projects, and hopefully building some support there, and being present to answer questions, of course, about the nature of the project. So that's going on tomorrow. Wanted to also mention that we are continuing to address issues with mold here in the courthouse. We've had ServPro out a couple of times, well, actually more than a couple, to both sample and also give us estimates on remediation. We have several areas in the building where we have found mold, down in the basement, in land services, and also in our IT department or MIS department. And so we are moving as expeditiously as possible to try to address those issues. One challenge is that ServPro, like many employers, is short-staffed, and so they're backed up on projects. What we're doing in the meantime is where ServPro has recommended it, we have sealed off workspaces to prevent the spread of mold spores and also to prevent exposure of our staff to mold. And so I don't have any specific information on when they're going to be able to come up and begin that remediation work. But we are going to do land services first because that was the first area that was identified. MIS and the basement will be after that. One thing is the remediation really can't happen until we're fully confident that we've prevented water from getting into the building, because if we do the repairs and then we have another heavy rain event and water gets in, the work will have been for naught. So working with our maintenance staff to make sure that we have fixes for the building envelope so that where water did get in, it won't happen again. The issue with the water in the basement is challenging because that relates to runoff off the roof. And currently, we've got the original clay pipes that form in sort of interior downspout for that water. They're undersized and they're also not mortared together. So they're basically they're the old clay tiles that kind of fit together, one with the kind of open end, and they just sit on top of each other. Those, when we get a heavy rain event, those get full, they back up, and then water leaks out. We're going to have to come up with some other way of getting rainwater off the roof. And I think it's going to involve closing off that interior downspout and then maybe building in scuppers to the edge of the building so that water can run off the edge of the roof and then down an exterior downspout. So, but we haven't really gotten into what that will involve. But we know that's a long-standing problem, and it needs to have a permanent solution. So I'm going to be working with maintenance on trying to figure out how we can accomplish that. There's also the complication of the fact that this is a historic landmark, that is the old courthouse, and so there may be some limitations on modifications that we can make to the building. But we want to find a solution that solves the problem once and for all. And so not sure exactly how that's going to look, but we are going to be working on that and trying to get that fixed ASAP. So those are a couple of key things. I was out of the office unexpectedly last week, and so I wasn't able to work on a few things one thing that I wanted to bring to the board this week was a request for proposals on construction management services. That's the next step in actually beginning the implementation of the capital improvement plan. I did not have the time to work on that. And so I am expecting to have that ready for the next business meeting, I believe on October 11th. Excuse me. So that's one thing. Then another thing, and I'll be emailing the board about this, the school district recently replaced boilers on the school, and that's a shared system with the YMCA. And we have an agreement with ISD 166 wherein we share the cost of heating fuel for the building, and then also capital expenses related to heating and cooling. And so the boilers have been failing for some time. This summer they replaced them. And so we are in for a quarter of the cost of that project, which I don't have the exact amount in front of me, but it's in the neighborhood of about $140,000. When we were doing the budget for 2023, this was not on the radar. We hadn't talked with the school district about it. We didn't know that the boilers would need to be replaced this year. And so we did not budget for that expense. So that is an expenditure that would have to come out of our fund balance. And Brady, I don't know if you had a chance to get those numbers, but I mean, the cost, it's not insignificant, but in terms of the percentage of our fund balance, it's something that we can easily absorb.
Yes.
And we are contractually required to share that cost with the school district.
Right.
So I'll have more information about that next week and a request to approve the payment to the district for that work.
Yeah, at worst case, I'd say we'd use some of that LATCF ARP funding.
Right, right.
If,
We do, that's
'cause
part of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we received. Local assistance and tribal funding.
We're not even using half of what's left in this year's budget, so it's available if we need it,
Yeah.
but I don't think it will be.
Yeah. So just wanted to put that on your radar, and I'll have more information coming to you in the form of an email, and then also, of course, in the agenda packet for the meeting in 2 weeks.
All right, excellent. Any questions for Administrator Ure? Thank you so much for that update.
For sure.
All right, we'll move on to Commissioner concerns and updates. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the items that I've been bringing up at EDA meetings, and I think I've mentioned it at our board meetings as well, is the idea of a municipal dispensary for cannabis. Let's see, where to start? The projected first date that a dispensary can be open will be January 1st, 2025. Mayor Benson has heard that it could be earlier, if all ducks get put in a row. I've also heard that it's likely later than that because all ducks won't be in a row. And there has been a little shakeup, as I've heard you, I'm sure you've heard in the news, with the first director of the Office of Cannabis Management. So that's presumably a setback, time-wise. I attended the Mitchell Hamlin Public Health webinar on the new law, and one of the things I learned there is federally, marijuana is a Schedule 1 substance. And so what that would mean, and even if, and there's talk about moving it to a Schedule 3, and forgive me, Attorney Hicken might be able to give us more insight on what those mean exactly, but Schedule 1 is like no medicinal value, addictive, I don't know, very harmful, like heroin, or I don't know, other ones. Narcotics, yeah. And then Schedule 3 is still on that scheduling system, unlike alcohol or tobacco. Those are not in the scheduling system. But what all that means is that the fear is, or maybe the reality is, municipalities would be liable if they sold something on the scheduled system. And so there's a discrepancy between the federal and state laws at this point, and it's really unclear how that discrepancy is going to be, when and if it'll be resolved. And so in that webinar, that point was brought up, and that one avenue could be another entity that's not the municipality per se, such as an EDA or some other entity that could house that for the municipal dispensary. And so there's not a whole lot of guidance on that yet, and like I said, everything's new and unclear, but that seems like our community's best shot if we wanted to collect revenues from a municipal dispensary, is have it housed in the EDA. And so I brought this up with the EDA board, and kind of a novel concept, and cannabis is uncharted territory, and so there's not a whole lot of comfort there at this point, and a lot more information is required, and including a business plan and just what all that would mean. As just kind of a rough guess, the idea of $250,000 would be required for a startup of that business, and that rough guess did not include, well, I don't know if it included a building. It did not include the construction of a building, certainly. It may have included kind of first-year expenses for rent, or I don't know. So, if there's going to be a municipal dispensary created by 2025, that work needs to happen in 2024. And in order for that work to happen in 2024, we need to budget for that work right before we pass our levy for 2024. And all of that is without having enough information. So it puts us in a very tricky situation. Nobody's comfortable. Nobody has enough information. We're at quite the disadvantage there. But I still strongly believe that our community will benefit greatly if there was a municipal dispensary versus a private dispensary. The profits of a private dispensary will go to that single entity, versus the profits of a municipal dispensary would go to the benefit of all county and city residents. And so I've mentioned this before, that the city's levy is subsidized by 50% of by their enterprise funds. So that's incredibly significant for city residents. if the county were to have a municipal, it wouldn't subsidize us by 25 or 50%, but it would still be a significant amount. I forwarded on an article, I wish I would have forwarded on to you as well, Attorney Hicken, but just in July, the tax revenues from cannabis sales, and this is not marijuana, this is the hemp-derived stuff, was $770,000, and that's a 10% tax, and so I guess the sales then would be 7.7 million, which seems outrageous. And that was in July when it was first opened for business with only, I think, 500 registered businesses. And since then, we now have 1,250 registered businesses selling that. So I don't know that you can do a direct relationship with those taxes and with those revenues, but it's going to be significantly more than that July figure. So, and that gives you kind of an idea of the revenue potential from the marijuana as well, even though it's different things. And that was one of the questions that EDA members had, is like, well, is this even a profitable business, or is there any money here? And the answer there is resounding yes. So I think it is worth pursuing. The hard part is, again, not having enough guidance, not having enough knowledge, or not having enough insight into what's going to be happening federally or in the state. So it makes it really difficult, but then again, if we do not budget for it, we could use reserves to do that, but I don't think that's a good way to operate or to plan. So the EDA did not want to include that in their budget request, and I think that was wise, just because there isn't enough information. But I don't want us to be caught flat-footed if our community decides that we want to go through and do this. So that's all I know. And if we want to have the option, we need to budget for it, and it'll have to be included before we set the final levy.
So, Madam Chair, just a question, Commissioner Mills. So the board approved the preliminary levy at its last meeting. And so, that train has kind of left the station already. Do you have some alternative approach to doing that? I mean, that was not contemplated in the proposed 24 budget. And with the boards having set the preliminary levy now, that's kind of set. So.
Yes, thank you for that question, and that's a really good point. Traditionally, our final levy is significantly lower than our preliminary. I don't know if we're gonna be able to achieve that. We always try to achieve that, but that's something that as we go to our final levy, that we should keep in mind that there could be this expense as well. So my hope is there's going to be enough wiggle room in that to be able to accomplish this if the board decides that we should budget for that. But otherwise, yeah, again, that would be coming out of reserves or be flat-footed. So, yeah, we could be caught, but I think we really should be considering this for the benefit of our community.
And
Commissioner Storrow.
Thank you. So Dave, if we would support a municipal building for this, who's to say that a private person couldn't come in other parts of the county to do theirs too?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And how the law is written is communities of 12,500 people or less are only required to allow for one dispensary. And so the city could allow for one, and the county could allow for one, or our community could only allow for one. So I've been talking with Mayor Benson about the possibility. I don't think the city council has taken it up. I know Mayor Benson has been sharing information with the city council, but my impression is they have their hands full with the current liquor store city hall project, and that has to be separate than a dispensary by law. And so I don't think they've made any progress there, and I need to engage Mayor Benson a little bit more. Initially, I was hoping that we could just have one dispensary, both for kind of a slow movement into that new area and the new law, and then maybe down the road we could allow for more permits, just seeing how it goes. But we are required to allow for one, and so if we do that, I would like it to be municipal, so that benefits, well, so we can control just a lot, both education and distribution, but then also capture those revenues for our community. But my concern is that we would have a competitor with the city. So I really wanted to collaborate, but one point that was brought up is even if it's exclusively owned by the county, the city would still benefit because the city residents also pay county taxes. And for whatever reason, that wasn't at front of mind. I was just really looking for that partnership for the city-county. So that's where I need to engage Mayor Benson a little bit more, and I think the city council should be talking about this too. So, but yeah, so we kind of, if we were to have that, we would kind of have a walk on that, and it would not allow for any more. And who knows, maybe the state would change that too. I don't know. Well,
I don't know. I do have another comment. So we have about 3 months before we set our final levy. There's a lot of things we all need to understand about this. So is there some way that our board and the city council can meet and really talk about this? Send us an outline of, as you gather this information, because $250,000 is a big deal.
absolutely, yeah. And yeah, I would like more background on that, Gus. That $250,000. Business is not my forte, and so I need more information on that too. My thought is that we don't need to have a fully developed plan before we budget for it, but we do need to budget if we're gonna do it. We can develop that plan after, but if we're not considering it, if we're not budgeting for it, we're not gonna be in a very good position. So I don't expect to have, the answers aren't gonna be resolved in 3 months because it's up to the state, and it's a long process, but just, allowing ourselves to be able to do it, I think is really what I'm hoping for us to do. And hoping that the city is going to be on board too, to some capacity. So
It's always the first steps, and it sounds like you're giving us the first steps.
I think so. I think budgeting, yeah, it seems kind of backwards, but I think budgeting might be just the first step to allow us to do it. And then as the law is better clarified, then we'll be able to develop the actual plan later. So I'll try to get as much information as I can. I'm basically just going off of whatever AMC sends us, and Mayor Benson is going off of whatever the League of Minnesota City sends. That's about as good as we can do until the state really better defines what's going to be the name of the game here. So.
Well, thank you for that.
Attorney Hicken, you had a comment.
Yes, I was just curious, Commissioner Mills, whether you're aware of any other municipalities, cities or counties that are in this state who are contemplating a project like that.
Not specifically, but I'm told by AMC that there are numerous municipalities that are interested. There has been only one in the nation, and that was in the state of Washington. And AMC has reached out to that city, I believe it was a city, to ask more about that process, how it went, what was required. It's a really touchy subject because it failed. My understanding is it did not fail for lack of viability. It failed for personality conflicts, and so nobody will talk to AMC about it. It's just too sensitive because I don't know if the whole city council turned over, if their mayor got ousted, or what happened. But yeah, it was I believe it was a small town in Washington, but I don't know the specifics. But that's just what I'm told from AMC, so. I could ask for more specifics, but I don't know what that would get from us except for maybe collaborating and trying to figure this out, work through it. But AMC is, they understand the significance and the potential there. And there are other counties for sure interested, and some of those counties are more interested to, rather than reap the revenues, just to put the lockdown on it, because they might be counties that don't want any dispensaries. So they feel like if they have it, then they can just run it poorly, or I don't really know.
Madam Chair, just to follow up, if Cook County were to wish to limit the number of dispensaries in the county, the mechanism to do that is a cannabis regulatory ordinance. We do have a draft ordinance related to use of cannabis, public use of cannabis. We have not to date included any language in our draft restricting the number of dispensaries. But so you know, that is an option, and if there's consensus from the board that you would like to see draft language related to that, please let me know. We're at the moment trying to reschedule another meeting of kind of the intergovernmental committee that's working on the cannabis ordinance, but we're having trouble getting everybody's availability lined up.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I feel very strongly that we do want that ordinance. The last meeting that we had regarding the use ordinance, my impression is we kind of came to, we were all kind of like, yeah, we should do this. And then we kind of came to the conclusion, wait, the state is taking care of most of this. We really just care about not having use on our county, in our county facilities or on our county property. Where the buildings are. And so we're kind of backing off on that. But as far as the regulatory ordinance, is that what you said?
Regulatory.
Yeah, just a general description, that's not the title, but.
Yeah, I would, my 2 cents is yes, we certainly want that. And I think the city is on the same page. Even if we don't do a dispensary, I think that's just a really important thing to have, and we can change the number, but we do want that ordinance.
Administrator York.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just wanted to echo my support, even though I don't get a vote in these matters. The idea of having an enterprise fund as part of our operations that could be used to offset levy dollars and potentially reduce property tax burdens for local residents is a really appealing thing to me. I think it'd be good, and I totally agree with the idea that much better for us to do this as a county or county and city and keep those revenues here where they will provide a benefit to Cook County residents versus having them go to some private entity where those revenues likely would leave Cook County. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I think this is a really great idea. I think we need to explore it. And whatever I can do to support you in that work, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I think it's largely up to the state, but it's just that budgeting for if we're gonna do it.
Thank you for bringing that up.
It's tricky. It's tricky. And just to clarify, this is just for a dispensary. This does not, there's gonna be people growing marijuana, presumably, there's going to be that side of the operation, and then, I don't even know the different aspects, but processing or, I don't know, but, so it's not that we're going to have a municipal growing operation, it's just like a retail store, much like the liquor store is not brewing the beer or, distilling the liquor, it's just selling it, and so, I do think there will be other economic opportunities for individuals if they do want to have some part of this new business. I'm not trying to, squash business. I'm just trying to protect and enhance our community and our community resources. The revenues from this could go to housing, the revenues from this could go to childcare, the revenues from this could go to just offset the levy. So there's lots of options there. Since I was elected commissioner, I have been looking for enterprise options because I saw what the city had, and I thought it would be such a good way to try to reduce the burden on taxpayers. And most counties don't have enterprises. There are some that have, I think, enterprise landfills or enterprise maybe
Wastewater operations.
Sure, yeah. And they're not usually, they're more public services than they are revenue generating. And so I've kind of been laughed at for, enterprises aren't a thing. And I often point to the municipal liquor store that we have. And there are others, municipal liquor stores in the state too. But it's just been so long since there's been any opportunities. And this is a new opportunity that we can jump on versus you don't want a municipality coming in and taking over a private business that's already established, right? It's just that this is a new opportunity that we're not going to be shutting someone else down. But I'm sure it'll still be very controversial on a number of angles, but I think it makes a lot of sense. But time will tell. We'll see what the law does. But I just want to make sure we're thinking and talking about it and budgeting for it if we can. But as you say, we set our preliminary, so maybe there won't be room. But I'm hopeful that we can somehow find that.
Madam Chair, the other option, I mean, we talked about the local assistance fund, the ARPA dollars that we still have. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that could potentially be an opportunity if we need funds to do some planning work for this. I think the only restriction on those dollars is lobbying. So I think this would probably be an eligible use.
Good point, thank you.
Other items, other updates?
Well, initially I was offering to go to Ely, but I thought it was yesterday. And I'm happy to hear that you're going, Madam Chair, as well. So we'll have a team going there, and that's awesome.
We're actually, just as an aside, we are limited as to the number of people that we can bring, so it's 2 people per proposal.
Thank you.
And I don't know what the basis of that request is, but they were pretty clear that.
I think they're providing lunch, so they're paying for lunch for 2.
That could be.
And probably seating capacity and everything.
Right.
Yeah, it gets to be a crowd. I attended the Senate bonding tours when I was on the city council, and there was quite a crowd, and that was at Split House, and it was great. Very productive, very interesting to hear the other proposed projects. Some of them are just like, what are you talking about? And other ones, you're like, oh yeah, that could be very competitive for us. And at that time, we did not, it was for the boat launch that is now completed. And at that time, the bonding request did not go through. And it took a number of years before the funding was there. So I'm really hopeful and really grateful that you're going to advocate on our behalf. I don't think I have anything else at this point, but I bet you as we go down the line here, I'll think of something.
All right. Commissioner Storley, updates for us.
Yeah, thank you. Well, just briefly, I attended AMC in Alexandria, and I'll give a little bit bigger report with public health, because that's the committee that I'm on. So I'll do that another time. However, I want to bring you up to speed with the St. Louis County Housing Consortium. We meet twice a year, and we have a lot of new members, which is great. I mean, they rotate, And as a result of that, I was asked if I would be vice chair.
Oh.
Because I've been on the committee for so long. And I said, okay, I only meet twice a year, right? Okay, I can do that. So we meet in the fall and in the spring. And just an example of what we talk about there. So we get federal money, and that usually comes in January, February. So the money that's left over in the fall is how we spend that money, which right now was $286,000. Jason came from HRA with a little $70,000. He'd like to do some improvements and windows and doors and that kind of thing. So we had 4 altogether. that we had to look at. How are we going to spend $386,000 between 4 projects? 2 homes to be rehabbed in 2 Harbors, and Jason's project, and another one in Silver Bay. This is how you work when you want to collaborate. So One Roof Housing said, you know, we're asking for 200 and some thousand. That would already take most of the budget. How about if I back down and only ask for a lot less? And when he did that, we spend all $386,000 on all the projects.
Wow.
So now we're broke. But that's okay, because more money will come. It's like, please, more money. And it's about $550,000 to $600,000 comes into the consortium which St. Louis County administers. And then we meet to dole it out. So I came away feeling, yay, you know? When you collaborate and say, well, I guess my ask isn't all that important, I can still get other money to do the rest of the ask, you know, you're with a good group.
Yeah. Bravo.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else this morning?
No, that's my good news.
All right.
Congratulations.
We like having
Thank
good
you for
news.
serving there, too.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Well, I have a number of things. Last Thursday, there was an opportunity for commissioners to have a tour of Superior National, and for those unable to attend, we had photographs and some narrative that went out. But Mary Somnis and Heath Ekstrom gave us a tour, and we looked at fairway issues, some of the edging and that is in disrepair around the bunkers, damage related to the flooding of the Poplar River a couple years ago, and talked about how Soil and Water is working with them on that. But it was a very, very valuable piece. We looked at some of the aging equipment and how they're literally piecing together pieces of equipment to get their work done, the lack of staff that they have, the wage differential between what's happening at Superior National and what's happening, let's say, at golf courses in Duluth. So it really provided a real good overall picture of the beautiful place that Superior National is, but the many challenges that they have as well. Then we're in the midst of our interviews for an HR director, and today we'll finish up with round 2 of those interviews, so we'll hopefully have some good news to share in the very near future. We had a very good HRA meeting and did a lot of project updates. Switchback Village, which is right under the water tower, likely is going to be postponed in terms of breaking ground until spring. Discussion about curing concrete footings in the winter, and some of those challenges came forward. So just wanted to give you that update. Temperance Trails in Tofty, very exciting. There are some pre-sales that have already occurred, and there's going to be more pre-sales for those units over the winter. That group will be coming before our Planning Commission in November for a conditional use permit. And then the Envelope and Energy Improvement Pilot Program is the one that Commissioner Stoyley was referring to, which will provide us opportunities to have funds for rehabbing some housing that we have here already. We're in the midst of looking at that wetland delineation for the Minnesota Power property on Kramer Road, and sharing that with potential developers to see if there is an interest in developing that property. And then we're engaged in the Heights, which is the proposed apartment complex next to Up Yonder, which is 32 to 36 units. We're kind of in a discussion in that area and looking at development of that project for young professionals and workforce rentals. That would be rentals. And up on Birch Mountain, potential for 19 to 20 townhomes. And then the 2 lots at Cedar Grove, which could be turned into a couple of private tiny houses or small houses there. So lots of things in the hopper. When I think about what has been accomplished over the last year in the HRA, it just makes me proud that the county has supported that, and so really good news there. Commissioner Mills?
Madam Chair, could you remind us where Birch Mountain is?
It is west, what's the name of the property called? The Yorkburg, and it's in the western part of Grand Marais. You know, back, let me see if I can, I'm not knowing my street numbers.
Not
or
Birch
names.
Drive?
Not Birch Drive, no.
East of that?
Kind of near the creek and northwest of 8th Avenue, that undeveloped area.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right. And that's a private developer that is looking at that.
South of 7?
Yes, south of 7.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And then we had our safety committee meeting yesterday. Again, talked about mold. We're waiting on ServPro. And one really positive thing is we talked about the number of staff, 19, who have now completed that training, first aid training, Narcan and whatever. But also we're looking at additional training. And Jana is trying to also figure out a way to make sure that all employees know where the AEDs are located. So there'll be some kind of a fun little scavenger hunt or activity so that the many new employees that we have an opportunity to find out where not only AEDs, but our fire extinguishers are located and all those things in the workplace. And lastly, we had a great local emergency preparedness committee meeting last week. We had Joe Monroe from the National Weather Service in Duluth talk about our changing climate, talk about large precipitation events like the 7 inches that they had just west of Duluth last weekend, and talked about how those are going to be occurring more frequently, that winters are warmer, the fewer nights well below zero, killing those pests that we don't want around, but we're going to have fewer nights, less ice coverage on the big lake, shorter winters, warmer summer nights, and just all the implications that we have: extreme weather, prolonged weather patterns, extreme periods of drought, extreme periods of precipitation, and it just really makes you think we have a lot of work to do to get ready for our future. But it was very, very valuable, a good question and answer session, and probably more questions than answers, but very valuable. So did you come up with any other?
No, my
Updates.
apologies, Madam Chair.
You usually have something, so.
Yeah, off my game here.
Oh, golly. All right. Well, thank you for all the information, Commissioners. We have a number of meetings listed coming up, quite a number of them, and then we have our correspondence, which is our sales tax comparison through July, lodging tax comparison. Any comments you would like to share, Auditor Powers, about those? Just based on your historical knowledge.
Please, I was not paying attention. I'm
Oh.
sorry.
Just talking about our sales tax and lodging tax comparison through July. Any remarks you'd like to make about those? I know that there's a little dip. We have to keep in mind the pandemic and what happened during that time period. And so I always want to have us think back to that time period as we're looking at those tax comparisons.
Yeah, you can see the sales tax, that's remained strong. The increases aren't as great as we've seen in the last couple of years, but still, with an 8% increase last year and a 46% increase the year before, we're still at about a 5.5%. That's just, I think it's remarkably strong. I think it indicates the changing demographics here, the number of people moving into the area and the amount of activity. Now, the lodging tax, a little bit different, that they have, even through this month, they've fallen back, but of course if you compare it to pre-COVID,
Right.
we took a big jump when people decided this was the place to be outdoors and to be safe. Everybody's a little bit surprised by the strength of that, And now it's fallen back a little bit. It could be hiding other changes, but that may be going on with vacation rentals, for example, things like that. But it's kind of hard to see in those numbers without other information. But the broad change makes sense, I think.
Well, thank you for your perspective. We
Sure.
always appreciate it. Commissioner Mills?
It sure doesn't feel like lodging tax numbers are down, or lodging is
No.
down. It's a
No,
very
that's-
busy, yeah,
And that's the part that makes you wonder if there's something else
sure.
going on, because, the amount of traffic would tell you that it should be, logic would say, why isn't that going up with sales tax, as it usually has? They usually track pretty well together, let's say over the last 20, 30 years, but they're kind of diverging this year. And so that is, you want to see if that continues, or if this is just an anomaly. We're gathering more information on that with the permitting system, but don't have enough to really make a comment on what's happening,
Thank you.
if anything else is happening.
Well, anything else for the good of the order here? Not? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Support.
Commissioner. Support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.